What it do, citizens of P Town? You know what this is. This is the video where I talk about movies that were just so close, that just weren't quite there as far as five-star movies go, but maybe they could be five-star movies, and I just wanted to talk about them. I know that in that tier list, last video I did was a tier list ranking video where I tier list my five-star movies and kind of rank them based on tiers. And one of the tiers, the lowest one, I kind of talked about how if some of these movies present on this tier list are five stars, then maybe other movies can be five stars as well. This video is me talking about some, just some of those five-star movies or 4.5 star movies that are close to five stars and maybe could be. And I just wanted to use this video to talk about other movies that I don't get to talk about. And I feel like there's a little bit more variety and you get to know me a little bit more as a movie fan through not just my five-star movies, but through my 4.5 star movies as well. So yeah, I just want to take the opportunity to talk about it. And yeah, so let's get into this. I'm looking at two screens right now. I was just kind of disoriented. So let's go into this. We have a few movies on here that I retroactively rated five stars that should have been on the tier list. Starting off with Confessions, released in 2010, directed by Tetsuya Nakashima. This is an amazing movie. The premise is about a young school teacher who tragically lost her daughter, who was just a toddler's age, tragically, in an accident. And the movie begins with this teacher announcing to her class that, one, she suspects that her child's death was a murder, and two, that the culprit is potentially one of her classmates, one of her not her classmates, one of her students. So it's a really great and compelling movie that is honestly genre bending and juggles a lot of things. I mean, first, of course, it's a mystery film in which we have to try to figure out who the culprit is, kind of at the same time that these students are trying to debate among themselves as well. It's a thriller because there's a lot of extreme moments and moments of great tension and stuff like that. And it's also multiple case studies in which we kind of dive into the headspace of these classmates, why they could be the culprit, and what led them to allegedly committing the act, as well as students' different perceptions of other classmates and maybe why they might assume that these students are the culprits and things like that. It's very fast paced. It has moments of, while it has moments of extreme, it also has a lot of meditative and reflective moments. It juggles all these different genres and also is under 2 hours long. It is a beast of a movie and an incredible one to go off of that. And so it's a five-star movie, definitely one of my favorites. Should have been on that tier list. Another movie that should have been on that tier list that I retroactively rated five stars was The Bridge on the River Kwai, directed by David Lean, released in 1957. This is probably my favorite David Lean film. I've only seen a couple, but man, this is a great one. I mean, it's probably my favorite war film. It's a movie about persistence and perseverance. It's persisting to your own ethics, your own morals, your role. In this case, Alec Guinness as the general who has to look over his soldiers in this Japanese POW camp. How far would you go to stay true to your role as the general, to maintain the morale of your soldiers in this camp, to not only know your role as a prisoner of war to take orders, but also to stay true to, your country. But how far would you go if preserving the morale of your own soldiers means benefiting the other side? In this case, building this titular bridge that would benefit the Japanese army. It's super compelling. It's a great epic, one of my favorite war films, probably my favorite war film, and a five-star movie for sure. The last one that I retroactively rated five stars is Seven Samurai, directed by the legendary Akira Kurosawa, released in 1954. This should have been on the tier list. This should have been. I should have rated this five stars at the time. I regret it, but it is. So yeah, let's get into other movies that I probably haven't discussed before. Lawrence of Arabia, I watched for the first time this year. Released in 1962, also directed by David Lean. I had this as a 4.5 star movie, and Bridge on the River Kwai as a five. Now, Lawrence of Arabia is without a doubt David Lean's best known film. It's the bigger technical achievement. It won even more awards than Bridge on the River Kwai did, and such a huge influence on cinema. I could consider this a 5-star movie. I initially didn't because I think Bridge on the River Kwai accomplished just as much as an epic while also being an hour shorter. And not to say that Lawrence of Arabia is a boring 4 hour movie. It is easily the most entertaining 4 hour movie I've ever seen. But because of its longer length, I don't retain as much as what happened throughout the movie, because it is so long. You know what I mean? I think I can name just as many big moments that happen in Bridge on the River Kwai, which is an hour shorter than Lawrence of Arabia. What sense I was trying to say? I can name just as much moments in both movies, despite Bridge on the River Kwai being shorter. So that's why I kind of consider Bridge on the River Kwai a better movie. But with that said, if I mean Lawrence of Arabia has so many addictive wide shots. It's one of the best looking movies that's ever been made, that I have ever seen and will ever see. Bridge on the River Kwai doesn't have a fraction the number of great cinematography that Lawrence of Arabia has. I think just because of that alone, Lawrence of Arabia could be a 5 star. So I'm considering it. We'll see. The next movie I want to talk about is The Martian, released in 2015, directed by Ridley Scott. We'll be hearing more from him throughout this list. This is kind of one of those benchmark movies that I think are that I mentioned before that are so close to a 5 star movie, yet not. Right? I think that if I like a movie more than The Martian, it's probably 5 stars, and if I like it less, then it is 4.5 stars or lower. So it's just this is just kind of one of those landmark movies talked about before. I won't go into too much detail. Moving on, let's talk about Close Up. I've got to watch that Abbas Kiarostami film Close Up that I mentioned in my what I watched this year in what was it, July. Finally watched it. I think it's an incredible movie, and I can talk about how authentic it feels because it's a docufiction hybrid, because it tells the story, the true story, while what do you call it, recasting the same people in this true story in this court case. But I'll talk about it separately and why, in terms of my own perception and the life that I experienced, why I think that Close Up resonates with me and could potentially be a 5 star movie. This movie is about connection and about a man trying to form connections with others. He impersonates his favorite director to get close to this family. He lies to them and he kind of says, "Oh, yeah, you'll be in my next movie. We can get close and all that. You can be my next movie." Lies to them. There's this famous scene right here at the end of the movie where two characters are riding on a motorcycle or a moped, and it's about this man right here trying to form that connection with that family, to form a genuine one. And I think about my own connection to this movie, in which when I went to Vietnam this summer, I met cousins on my dad's side of the family, cousins that I didn't know existed and had never met before. And there's some awkwardness because of the language barrier and the cultural barrier, and of course we had us having just met each other for the first time and only for a few days. But they took us out to see, I believe it was Hanoi, and they took us out on the mopeds. And it was just kind of that moment where I got to see the city riding behind one of my cousins and just establishing that connection. And I feel this ending scene, like literally, I feel it and I relate to it. And our own experiences, our own life experiences, shape the way that we experience other movies. And I think Close Up really kind of nailed that. So maybe off the top of my head, I wouldn't consider a 5 star movie. I think that because of that extra connection, if it needs just that thing, then Close Up could potentially have it. So really great movie and really resonant. Moving on, we have Blade Runner, released 1982, directed by Ridley Scott. I did not consider this a 5 star movie, but I considered Blade Runner 2049 to be a 5 star movie. Blade Runner could very well be a 5 star film because I get more out of it when I rewatch it. I mean, the Tears in the Rain monologue resonates so much with me. The themes of humanity and what it means to be human or what it means to be alive hits a lot more when I rewatch Blade Runner than 2049. In fact, if I want to try to get more out of a movie and its depiction of its themes of humanity, it's going to be Blade Runner all the way. So, could have been a 5 star movie, probably should have been a 5 star movie, but just wanted to talk about that and acknowledge it. Moving on, we have Five Elements Ninjas. I think that this could be a 5 star film because I put Bodyguards and Assassins in the tier list as a 5 star movie. And I mentioned that it's mainly the second hour, or I guess the last hour, that I consider 5 stars and not the first 80 minutes. I've kind of gone like this for Five Element Ninjas. I first thought, oh, this is one of my favorite martial arts films ever. Then I kind of went, oh man, there's just not as much action in this movie as I thought it was upon rewatch. And now I'm kind of thinking, if I consider Bodyguards and Assassins Bodyguards and Assassins a 5-star movie for its last 60 minutes, then I consider Five Element Ninjas a 5-star movie if it just had a boring second act. Just a second act, not like a full hour. And it has one of the best finales from Shang-Chi. So, yeah, it could be a 5-star film. Moving on, we have The Furious Hyena. This is Jackie Chan's directorial debut, released in 1979. As I mentioned, it is easily my favorite Jackie Chan film of the 70s. And yeah, I think it is a good benchmark film. I think that if I like a movie more than Fierce Hyena, it probably is a 5-star. And if I like it less, it's probably not a 5-star. So a benchmark movie, a movie that you can compare to, but could be up there as well as I watch more Jackie Chan films and more martial arts films. I think it might hold up a lot. Moving on, we have a movie, Tampopo. I believe I've talked about this in my what I wanted to watch or what I have watched this year. Um, Maybe I haven't. Either way, I think that this is a great film, and I'm going to look forward to watching the rest of Juzo Itami's films. I mean, what's so great about Tampopo is that Itami is able to take universal things, in this case food, and make it feel so eccentric and so unique, while um, at the same time feeling very close to reality. I just remembered another movie that I forgot to put on this on this list. But anyways, if other movies like Supermarket Woman or The Funeral do this exact same thing, and I love them just the same, I could bump up this Juzo Itami film. So really incredible, easily one of my favorite Japanese films. Could be 5 stars depending on the day, but I think it also depends on how much I like the rest of Juzo Itami's filmography. Moving on, we have two movies right here, directed by Park Chan Wook, who is easily one of the best directors this century, Asian or not Asian, easily. And two of his great films are The Handmaiden, released in 2016, and of course, Old Boy, released in 2003. I watched Joint Security Area for the first time this year, another one of Park Chan Wook's films, and I loved it. I think it's a 4.5-star movie. With that said, I think that The Handmaiden and Oldboy are just superior films in multiple ways, on a technical aspect, in a thematic aspect, in its themes, and in its impact and its performances. If JSA is a 4.5-star movie, then these two are probably 5-star movies. I think they're just probably one rewatch away each from becoming 5 stars. But I had to mention them. Amazing, amazing. Moving on, I mentioned The Prestige. I kind of said that, oh, if Christopher Nolan's Inception is a 5-star movie, then his film The Prestige, released in 2006, is probably a 5-star movie. Just wanted to kind of mention that, and yeah, it might have been a mistake to omit it. I just realized that I omitted Inside Llewyn Davis from this list. That is up there as well. But anyways, Grave of the Fireflies, released in 1988, directed by Isao Takahata. This is, I think, is one of the most important films ever made, because I mean, movies are meant to foster empathy. I mean, that's my reasoning for the purpose of movies and a lot of art in general, meant to foster empathy. And Grave of the Fireflies is a phenomenal accomplishment in achieving that of empathy. I mean, these characters aren't the most complex. They're not the most nuanced, or they don't go through these incredible character arcs. I mean, these are just kids in war. Kids should not be going through war, and that makes moments like these, where they get a little bit of candy, just feel so impactful. Or just this image on the right here of just them being happy for once. You don't feel this way for many other characters in cinema, and it's just hard to rate a 5 stars because it's so devastating and you never want to watch it again. But I could consider 5 stars because if I have Perfect Blue as a 5-star movie, then damn, Grave of the Fireflies is a 5-star film as well. So yeah, we move on to 1917, released in 2019, directed by Sam Mendes. This, I would have to say, is one of those benchmark 4.5-star movies, in which it may never be a 5-star movie, but as long as it exists and I love it and rewatch it, I will compare other movies and say, hey, I like this movie more than 1917. It's a 5-star movie. That's what that means. So just wanted to mention that. I was actually close to putting this on the tier list too, but just prevented me from doing so. But it absolutely could be um, a 5-star movie. Who knows? But maybe a benchmark. Next up, we have two movies From the same franchise on this list, we have Alien, directed by Ridley Scott, released in 1979, and Aliens, released in 1986, directed by James Cameron. These could be five-star movies. I mean, Alien is one of my favorite horror films of all time. As you may know, I'm not a horror guy. I get scared easily, but never do I watch a horror film and I'm just being scared and just impacted and thrilled by a movie while also just being like, this is so cool. I mean, it's so iconic. The chest burster scene. I love that little scene where the face hugger just falls onto, I believe it was Ripley's shoulders. Of course, the moment where you see the xenomorph for the first time, but rather than it being like a jump scare, it's like it's in the darkness and it's prowling and there's just water dripping off of it and we just see it. And like and then that's the scare. It's not a jump scare, but that's it right there. It's such a well directed film and could be a 5 stars and probably should have been. With that said, Aliens I also think is nearly, if not just as good as the original Alien. I mean, one, I've rewatched Aliens more than I've rewatched the original Alien. I think that it accomplishes a similar amount of horror thrills while also being a lot of fun. I mean, it's also a sci-fi action film as well. I love the camaraderie between the cast. And of course, I mean, if I haven't said this before, Ripley is one of my favorite heroes in cinema. Not just heroines, but just heroes in movies, man or woman. And we get a lot of that through Aliens rather than Alien. I mean, Sigourney Weaver is great in the original Alien, but man, just her, not only her motherly love in Aliens, but also just her badassery in Aliens is just so awesome. So I think that these movies are just so close to each other. I might consider Alien the superior film, but there's really, if Alien is a 5 star film, there's not much for me holding back than having Aliens as a 5 star movie. So both of these could be up there and could be joining the 5 star gallery very soon. We move on to Denis Villeneuve's Enemy. I have only seen this film once. And this was released in 2013. I saw it, I believe, in 2019. Haven't watched it since then, but it could be up there. I mean, this is my Vertigo. This is my Vertigo, which a Vertigo's movie I'm going to talk about in a future video late this year or early next year. But I just love the feeling of paranoia that wells up in Jake Gyllenhaal's character throughout this movie. I love the surrealist imagery, the visual motifs of the spider and its themes of adultery and living a double life. I love this movie. I mean, it's because of Enemy that I started paying more attention to directors in movies. And once you get to that stage where you start paying attention to directors, you start a whole nother journey. You just open up the world to so many other movies. And so because of that, I have Emmy as a 4.5 star movie. I think it is one watch away from being 5 stars. I mean, I actually don't see why not outside of another rewatch. But this is a damn great movie, underrated movie, and with Denis Villeneuve, killing it recently with the Dune movies. Definitely check out Enemy. Definitely check it out. We move on to the SpongeBob movie. Look, the SpongeBob movie isn't the first movie that I think of when I think of 5 star films. But if you ask me, Preston, what is your favorite road film of all time? Is it Easy Rider, 1969 with Peter Fonda? Is it Little Miss Sunshine? I would not hesitate to say that my favorite road film is the SpongeBob movie. Okay. And I think you agree too. I think you understand this. I don't think I need to explain this as much as I initially thought. I mean, if you saw the videos recently of the midnight screenings of the SpongeBob movie, look up the recent midnight screenings of the SpongeBob movie and you just see the crowd going crazy at everything. Especially that scene towards the end where it's like, "Daddy, no!" And then there's videos of the whole theater just yelling, "Daddy, yes!" at the movie. I think people are going to agree with this. SpongeBob movie is very close to 5 star movie. So yeah, there you have it. Last but not least, we have not one but two Akira Kurosawa films. We have High and Low, released in 1963, and Sanjuro in 1962. I mentioned that I put Seven Samurai as a 5 star movie that should have been. My top three Kurosawa films as of right now are Seven Samurai, High and Low, and Sanjuro. And so if Seven Samurai is a 5 star movie, I could consider these two films also 5 stars as well because they're just so close together in terms of which ones I prefer over each other. And it depends on the day and also depends on rewatches. I consider Seven Samurai the best because I rewatched it the most out of these two. In fact, I haven't rewatched these two at all. With that said, I think that Sandro is great because I love the take on the Yojimbo character. I guess in this case the Sandro character. But I think compared to the movie Yojimbo, which as you may know is kind of like the prequel to this movie. I mean, Sandro's a sequel, but I love Toshiro Mifune's take on this character because he's more reflective, he's more meditative, he's more lived in, and he's also funnier too. So that's why I love Sandro more than Yojimbo, and I could consider it an all-time favorite. And in the case of High and Low, I think it's one of his best directed movies. Of course, that was best directorial achievements, especially in terms of blocking and staging and things like that. And also because our rewatch is around the corner, I actually picked up the High and Low Criterion Collection release, which is also depicted on the screen right here. So, gonna be rewatching this movie sometime later this year, and this could be joining the ranks. All right, so there you have it. Those are over a dozen other movies that I could consider 5 stars, and those aren't even it. I mentioned Inside Llewyn Davis could have been on this list and should have been in this video, but there's so many other movies that I love. But these are just some of them. The opportunity for me to talk about other movies I love, get to know me as a movie fan. Let me know more of your favorite movies down below. Tell me about your movies that are just so close to being perfect, so close to being all timer, but isn't. I'd love to get to know you and all of your preferences. Thank you all for watching. I got more movie videos coming soon. Thank you for all the support, and I'll catch y'all later.